Hello everyone, Blue Star Saber here, once again to do another One Piece chapter review, chapter 1171, Ragnar. This chapter follows events of the last one in which we saw Howard continuing his rampage across the castle as all the guards, let's see, Shanks, Gaban, let's see, and Jar, well not really Jar because he's got a sword in his head now, tried to stop him, and where we learned that apparently let's see, the Guards Knights tried to take back Shanks multiple times. As a result, the Roger Pirates got much experience in fighting them and how to defeat them, if you will, and explains why Gaban and St. Somers seems to have quite the history. Meanwhile, Loki is dealing with a magic hammer, which turns out to be a squirrel. Is the hammer eating a devil fruit, or is the squirrel eating a squirrel eating a hammer type fruit? Either way, there's much more mysteries with this magic, with this hammer, and it eventually deems Loki worthy. And then we see Loki, granted not fully see, he's mostly silhouetted or off screen, if you will, taking down King Harold, which he professes as like gratefulness for Loki for what he's done, as well as what he did with the people that harmed Ida. Loki, of course, cursing him, but he ends up saying, "I love you too, son," which as Loki does his killing blow towards his father. As a result, let's see, he finally weeps, realizing how much his father actually loved him. Now, how will the flashback, how will the flashback go in this direction? Will we finally end the Elbaf flashback, or will we going to continue now Loki's journey until he encounters Shanks, let's see, about 6 years ago? Well, we're about to find out, but before we begin, as always, I like to do comments on the One Piece cover, and this one is reader request by Zoro being given a cat ear headband by a cat by Uru Nikuko, which I suppose fitting with the cat name, fitting with the cat theme, and where we see a sort of blackish cat, if I had to assume, or maybe we never kind of tell with these color spreads, these non-black and white color spreads, really. Where it's smiling and putting it on Zoro's head. He looks annoyed, but nevertheless doesn't seem to take it off. It's kind of nice, and I could probably see Nami maybe trying something like that if she's being teasy, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if this cat is supposed to represent Nami, but nevertheless, and Zoro's just taking her usual stick as usual, but who knows? Either way, it's a nice little cute moment with Zoro, so which sometimes he doesn't always get, especially in the time skip, but hey, it's a nice cover. The chapter begins with Gaban talking about how he had a terrible vision plain as day of what would happen if Harold left the castle and laying waste to the entire world. It'll be nothing like ruins. We see the Elbaf Castle, which let's see, we see some of the ruins and damage that we saw back in when Luffy and the original Romance Dawn trio, if you will. Let's see, with that perverted giant ended up exploring the ruins of Elbaf's castle. With Gaban saying it's hard to imagine that how with his wounds healed himself, there was actually a means of stopping him. Thinking, of course, what Loki did, as we see more giant corpses around the battlefield that took place. With Gaban being surprised at the treasure really having such power of Elbaf, which when asking Zhao, he said he's not really heard, and he thinks it chills his own spines to think of what might have happened had Loki not really been here. And Shanks thinks back to when he was talking about how Howard once told him, one time with the Knights of God, he will be able to bring a new dawn to Elbaf. And then Ritzy gets an image of his father, who seems rather affectionate in his own sort of twisted way, sort of saying, "Speak your desire, whatever it is, and you shall have it, Mitzi," and saying, "You've been deprived, my poor son." Saying that those miserable peons are not people. Forget what happened in the lower world, which basically Garland's own version of fatherly love, saying, "You can have whatever you want, my son. You must have endured hell living with those miserable lower life forms down below." So yeah, and we see Shanks getting mad, grabbing his left arm where the tattoo mark is, seemingly angry, wanting to either possibly try and tear it off or something, but Gaban stops him, telling Shanks to stop it, saying that That's your bad habit again, saying, don't you dare regret your birth. But Shanks then starts protesting, but why did Hal have to die? Saying he was pure-hearted to deserve that. Saying if only he, but Gabon cups him off, saying, it's not your fault and you know it. And saying that Shanks still has a role to play. She's sure of that. Everyone's life has a meaning, but he has to, of course, keep a level head, which arguably, normally Shanks is normally the most level-headed character that we've seen. So yeah. Anyway, we see Loki sitting next to what is now the corpse of his father. Using his own cloak to cover him up, as you see a pool of blood. As he talks about saying, is this what he gets for loving his country? Saying that it's a cruel joke, which, depending on the translation, this is what happens when you love your country too much. But yeah. But Loki's crying over his dead father. We then cut to the Holy Land, where Emu is speaking, though he seems a bit visibly shaking to some extent, at least with the way the text is implying, and maybe even that one panel we do see him, as he's talking to the 5 elders, saying that this was unexpectedly a rare ancient giant warrior with even greater power and a mortal body, saying nothing short of a monster, and it's apparently was killed, but wondering by who in Elbaf. And Loki the 5 elders then trying to say, I think Marcus Mars particularly saying, shall we have it investigated with Hal's Abyss in Elbaf remains, with Emu saying enough, saying it'd only be the death of more knights, as that's what they're implying on doing to Send, saying that performing the convert inflicts a cast upon Mu as well, since we learned that apparently the sort of contracts that Emu does also has an effect on him if one of those God's Knights is being killed. With him then saying Hal chose to debase himself before humankind, as the elders listen in, as he goes to connect his country to the lands of the people. He made himself a heretic, going like his tribal warriors, and every drop of blood calls out for Blado, saying, talking about how they carelessly incorporated him into the government, it would lead to an internal collapse. With him going on saying an ancient giant king of Elbaf agrees to the covenant is a gift that Mu never really got the likes to see, nor will he see again. So going about how he was the king of Elbaf, never should have had. And he ends up saying, and as a result of what we saw of these results, history does not lie, saying that their kinds are incompatible. And goes never forget that Elbaf is the D. Let's see. I believe Zhao telling Loki that news will have to lead to a great unrest in the kingdom, with Loki going he's going to go out to sea and take all the surviving gods with him. But Zhao ends up asking what of Howard's wishes, where we get a little brief flashback of him saying, tell the people of Elbaf what happened here. With Loki goes as we see many of the gods, here, as well as Shanks, Gabon, and Zhao listening in, saying I can't tell him, and tells them to listen closely to what he has to say, ordering to not speak a word of what happened here to anyone. With Zhao trying to protest, saying you'll be implying that he'll be blamed for it. With Loki going what's different from anything usual, saying do you really see a future where he becomes king and carry on his father's ideals? And that, but he thinks that there's a different way he can live up to him. And he says that he will use his powers and avenge his father and the soldiers that were slain today due to the world government's actions. Which is Zhao protesting, saying that this is nonsense or folly, if you will. So, given the fact that the world government is a very massive organization, and it's much more difficult than anything that Loki can imagine. But Loki's taking Ragnar and the giants, the Elbaf soldiers have now left, if you will, with Shanks and Gabon looking on silencing, thinking what they're going to have to do. And then we cut a little bit outside the castle. It seems some time has passed a little bit, where someone announced disaster, terrible misfortune. The August castle has been attacked, with many citizens screaming, Your Majesty, concerned for him. And then that ends the flashback, and we're cut back to the present day with Loki, and then apparently telling the end of like this story to like let's see, Hadrunan and Luffy and the other Straw Hats and New Giant Warrior pirates, as he says. So I sailed off the island, and saying about the shore at the time that you had returned, Hadrunan, let's see, he'd been fully transformed into Loki, the Father Slayer, in the public's eye. As he said no, and he didn't do anything to convince them that he was like not capable of that. But he ends up, then shouting and protesting, saying he wouldn't go as far as to celebrate that he killed his own father. He just didn't want everything that his father to be undone because of what happened in the end. And then asks Hadrunan, or do you still think that he should have told the country everything? And then you see Hadrunan listening on in silence, shade through his eyes as he's listening to everything he has, probably thinking everything that's going on, and perhaps thinking of what Loki just said, learning of his father. And then Gaban's going like, it's all true, Hadrunan, as Luffy is looking on silently, seemingly for once paying attention. Let's see, as Loki says, now do you get it? Why you didn't want to tell us all up again, this story? Well, let's see, Hadrunan saying he understands Loki now and why Chief Zhao agreed for like Loki's clemency, or depending on the translation, let's see, fan translation, why he didn't agree to your execution and prevented it from happening. Let's see. And like how and Zhao continued to protect him and all that stuff. And going like, in short, father chose death over the manipulations of the world government, I think. And goes like, ever since then, the government has been Elbaf's enemy. I'm wondering, how do they manipulate him like that? As Gaban says, as a matter of fact, these newly arrived Holy Knights of God play a pivotal role in Howard's story. But he says that Loki still doesn't know what happened to Howard in the Holy Land. With him saying that if you need more details, he can explain. With as you see the new giant pirates listening in, many of them all of them seemingly having shocked looks on their faces with the story just had, though I believe the one that Luffy saved in pre-time skip, Witsy, as well as Sanji and Zoro having more serious faces. With them going there, with Hadrunan saying it's not really necessary for now, Mr. Ya, and saying that he doesn't need a reason to protect his homeland. Loki's handcuffs are finally let loose. And if him going like, if you see eye to eye about anything, Loki, it's our love for our father. So he's going to allow me to apologize for that, if nothing else. Now asks him to fight with him for Elbaf's sake. Loki, now let's see, stretching his hands, with Loki going like, yay, way to go, Loki, now you can fight. And then we hear the sound of a monster as something lands into the underworld. And we see let's see, one of the Dragia monsters that what is his name? Holy Knights of God. I believe it was Killingham. It's been a while since I've had to say his name. Killingham has summoned, where let's see, Chopper is completely scared, like, let's see. That's it. That's what was raging above, saying that's a whole bunch of them. With Hadrunan saying that where did it come from? Is that a dagger? Saying those aren't real. With Loki goes like, now this is like the perfect warm up for him, telling everyone to go ahead. He can fly up. With Luffy going like, what is that thing? With Hadrunan now catching the boat, with the others telling him to hurry up. With them all then shouting, saying how they used to think you were a real Unity scumbag for killing, his own father. But they all sort of like apologize for that. But Hadrunan ends up going like, but only for this one thing, saying that all your other crimes still count. With Loki just Hadrunan saying this, with Loki just shut up and go on ahead. You asked all that they needed to say in this. With Luffy and Nennick saying, oh, this is amazing. Well, actually, Loki saying this is amazing, that he can now finally move again after 6 years. Luffy is just laughing. Chopper is completely terrified, but Gaban starts perhaps maybe notice what Chopper is feeling, or at least starts to realize something, telling him that while he appreciates his help here, he's concerned about his son. With Chopper going like, all right, sure, as he hops on Sanji as Sanji is carrying Gaban, with him, with Chopper telling Sanji to be nice and gentle, with him going like, yeah, I know, and says, what, you gonna stay here? With Loki asking Luffy, what on earth are you doing here? With Luffy saying he just wants to see Loki fight. With him goes like, all right, I'll show you my power. Let's see, I'll show you the power of Ragnia. As the Daga is a bit surprised that Loki's coming him, as Loki strikes, freezing him with an attack called Nibelheim, shocking Luffy as he goes like, what? As the skeleton throws and it looks like it's about to crack, ending the chapter. So yeah, the chapter has now officially ended, and now I can give my overall thoughts on the let's see, on the whole thing. First of all, I like just how Gaban is just talking about how, let's see, given what he witnessed at Harold, just how strong Harold is, and the fact that, let's see, Harold probably at that point was probably the second most powerful being in existence with his emu possession and Holy Knight immortality thing, with caused so much devastation. This is just how terrifying a monster this immortalized King Harold was, but it's like which further hypes up Loki's strength. Let's see, arguably, this is probably, and given what we saw at the end of this chapter, yeah, he seems to be an absolute beast. Heck, I'm now seeing some, let's see, YouTube commentators commenting whether or not that Loki has perhaps broken the, let's see, power scaling and this power system and what we were initially thought as the strongest. Because I'm pretty certain, if you asked fans for the longest time, Roger was the strongest. Let's see, pirate out there. Then, of course, Rock came along and people started debating that. And then, let's see, as we saw in this flashback, King Harold came in, and then there's like Garp. Of course, we all probably know that Emu is probably the strongest living being right now. But see, in the ancient past, it was probably Joe Boy. But now, with Loki, it's very likely that now many people are wondering, he is perhaps the strongest being in the world, well, minus Emu. And this is probably why Oda had to nerf him by having him injured from his injuries, that Loki needs to be nerfed in order for him not to outshine Luffy in this arc, which it is pretty insane. But it's also pretty insane just how powerful Loki's Devil Fruit seems to imply, not to mention Ragnar's. But yeah, but it is interesting that Jowl did not really know didn't know about, let's see, this treasured devil fruit, which, okay, fair enough. It seems to be a secret that was only passed down to the members of the royal family. So I suppose it makes sense because they don't want the secret getting out. Though granted, it seems Rock somehow found out about it, probably maybe due to his family's, let's see, past connections and history, that he was able to figure out that Harold, let's see, Elbaf apparently held one of the two devil fruits. They apparently needed to defeat Emu, which is curious because if it's this devil fruit, is the other one either the Nika one, but we see that, let's see, Rox did not really know about Nika, or did he think, or is it something like the Yami Yami no Mi, or is it maybe Lost Fruit? I don't know. If I had to guess, let's see, we'll have to wait and see what it is and what Loki is going to be doing with this devil fruit. Let's see, moving forward. But yeah. But anyway, but yeah, this was like Loki's hype is. But I do like seeing that we get to see many of the devastation and ruins that we saw from like when we first entered the castle, where all the dead bodies and like are. But I do like how we how Zhao just talks about how it's like a good thing Loki was here. Which, anyway, I'll go more into that later. But I do like how Shanks was end up thinking about his, let's see, previous talks with like King Howard, as he had that one private talk about how he thought if he officially joined the Holy Knights, he could get Elbaf's future going, but only to realize that no, it's all ended in tragedy and his death. And I do like how we end up seeing a little bit of like Garling, which I think everyone thinks that this guy's a complete scumbag, and some now think he's a bit of a fraud, given that he got his butt whooped by Rox, but that's Rox, what you expect. But But I will admit, in his own sort of twisted way, Garland does seem to be like a caring father, at least to his sons, at the very least. Particularly Shanks, since he thinks like since Shanks didn't let's see return to the Holy Land with Shamrock, he must have think his son had a terrible life with these filthy commoners, but or particularly the Roger Pirates. But arguably, let's see, for Shanks, let's see, the Roger Pirates were the family that raised him into the decent person that he is, and he's actually more disgusted with his own blood relatives. But it is in this, like I said, it's kind of let's see. It's kind of nice. It's kind of interesting to see that Stetsi for Garland in his own twisted way loves his son. Though, granted, given the fact that Shanks left the Holy Land and decided not to join in the end, he probably has contempt for like the man that Shanks is today, as like a strong man that protects the weak, as we saw when he killed let's see, Don Quixote's Mosgard. That those who protect the weak are worse trash than those lot. So yeah, it'll be very interesting if we ever get some Shanks interactions with his father and son in the present day, which arguably we're probably going to get one or the both, which let's see, I'm curious to see how that will take place. Let's see. So it'll be very interesting if Dragon gets involved. It'll be kind of cool seeing Dragon and Shanks versus Shamrock and Figal Garland. It'll be very interesting to see that sort of interaction, since Dragon is basically the cause of like Shanks becoming the person he is today. But I do like this that we see the anger in Shanks here. Arguably, Shanks is usually a lot more level-headed, even when he gets a bit mad. But here, it's like he just seems like you can understand why he's just so ashamed of his like, let's see, bloodline, given what they've done to someone like Harold. And it seems like he wants to try and tear off his own arm, which Gabon, of course, stops him. And I do like how this does not seem like the same rational Shanks that we just quite yet. And he's not quite that. Let's see. I do like how Gabon tries to like say, don't blame yourself. Don't blame your blood. Don't blame your birth. You're trying to saying that trying to ensure Shanks that he's a good person. And there is a role for him to play, and he's also not really defined by his blood family, if you will. So, and teaches him to keep a level head, which I wouldn't be surprised if Gabon is the reason that Shanks has a very level head, if you will. But yeah, I do like the sort of touching scene of Loki just crying, contemplating. It's like, is this the fate of those who love their country too much? Which arguably is very touching, because we do know that Howard loved his country so much that he was willing to sacrifice anything to strive for a better future. But as a result, he paid the price. Now, granted, some people might say that there's nothing loving your country too much, but arguably, I think there is, let's see, loving your country too much that you could either be too blinded by, either its problems, or arguably you love it too much that you're trying to make it better, but you're not you don't know what kind of danger you're putting in, I guess, depending on what the situation. But yeah, arguably, King Howard loved his country, and he was willing to do anything to try and do a better future, but he trusted the wrong people, and as a result, he ended up in the state that he is in now. So, but yeah. But I clearly that Loki is just thinking that it seems to be this is too cruel for a man that tried to do good for his country, and one that didn't really try and do it for like selfish gains. So he's clearly mad. I do like how Emu is like seems to be completely terrified at whatever could kill someone like Howard, and it seems like this is the first sign that he's shown fear since we've seen how he reacted to Joe Boy's hockey. Arguably, Loki has probably done more to shaken Emu more than any of the Yonko, Pirate King, Rocks, or even Gob did when he was fighting them in God Valley years ago. Arguably, no doubt he thinks they're strong, but clearly they were not had the strength of Loki that he seems to be visibly disturbed. But I do like how he's like, how does like this be? It was a once in a lifetime opportunity to try and bend the giants to his will. Granted, of course, he wanted to try and do it carefully, else they may destroy the world government within. But nevertheless, since like Harold was quite unique for like a king of the giants, of like willing to subjugate himself to try and connect to humans, he thought like this was an opportunity of a lifetime to get such a powerful warrior. But then someone, which he doesn't know, ended up killing him. So yeah, he is visibly shaken. I do like how the five elders like saying, should we send someone else? But Loki just concludes that no. I mean, Emu concludes no. They will end up just probably being killed as a result if they do go there. Granted, we learned that due to the abyss mark that was used there to like with Harold. Let's see, he is let's see, this explains why they're able to still teleport and all that stuff there. But basically, after this event, Emus was like, no, let's see, we're not gonna we're not gonna be able to like, you know, connect, let's see, use the giants as we like. It's best to keep our distance. They are enemies after all. And apparently the giants are of the D. Now, I don't know if that means all the giants have D, but it could very likely mean that the Elbaf giants are, are very strong allies of the D clan. Or like, you know, Joy Boy's followers, as many people believe those who bear the will of D were like part of Joy Boy's pirate crew or allies, if you will. So, yeah. Which I do wonder if that means like the fishermen and the Wano samurai are. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah. But I also like how it seems that Emu there's a bit of a like performing a covenant afflicts a cast upon Emu as well. So it's like he must be careful who he gives like his who he makes gods, knights, or five elders, because if they were to be killed in battle, it seems to like it will affect him and all that stuff. So yeah. So I do like how it seems like we've got kicking Emu's weaknesses. Granted, I know that many people seem to think that, okay, Emu seems like Emu, the guards knights might be serving as like Horcruxes, like with Harry Potter, with Emu. Granted, which arguably might be a way of weakening him or damaging him at the very least, but I'm not sure if it'll be enough to kill him. I'm not sure if Elder's going that way. I think it might seem to be implied with some, let's see, either Conqueror's Haki that you need to defeat Emu with, or maybe even with the Law's Devil Fruit, since that's likely what gave him his immortality. So yeah, I do like how Emu is like, let's see, thinking that, and then this explains why Emu did not really go after giants. It's like after the failure of Harold, best to leave them alone than more of our enemies anyway. But it seems like the recent events of One Piece have just changed his mind again, it seems. Decide, you know what, let's try and do it one more time, this time with a more forceful subjugation, if you will. So not like we did last time, but yeah. But I do like how let's see, when Jarl asks Loki what he does, he decides that he's going out to sea and taking all the guards. So it's interesting to learn that some guards did survive, and as a result, they seem to have become a part of a pirate crew with Loki as they set out to sea and all that stuff. Which does make me wonder what happened to them when Loki took the sea. Granted, we know that apparently Loki was defeated by Shanks, and then afterwards it seems Shanks very likely became a Yonko after defeating him. Officially recognized as a Yonko, but as a result, let's see, does that mean the rest of the giants either got killed, or I am wondering, which I think would be pretty cool happen, after Loki was defeated and dragged away, Shanks, in a sense, to keep the giants away from Elbaf and not to facing whatever charges they might have for like seemingly aiding Loki or being killed, as perhaps maybe, given the fact he's a Yonko, perhaps assigned each of these giant guards to go to one of his territories to protect, so they at least have a strong warrior looking out for them, at the very least. I'm hoping that is, but it does explain that, okay, maybe the guards and Elbaf were killed, but the rest were, let's see, were taken with Loki to form a pirate crew. We don't know their fate, but I'm hoping it's more of my Shanks theories. So, but yeah, I'm hoping it's more like they're now working directly under Shanks after Shanks apparently beated Loki. So, but yeah. But I do like how Giles like saying like, what about Harold's wishes and all that stuff. But Loki, I do like how Loki's like ordering everyone not to tell. And let's see, despite Giles' protest that he'll be blamed, but Loki's like, let them blame me. Let's see. I have that reputation. Let them just assume the worst. And the reason he does this is because he does. Despite Harold's wishes for Loki to become a king and all that stuff, he realizes that let's see, he doesn't really agree with his father's ideals. He's not really the best suited to, let's see, continue those ideals, if you will. He's more of a warrior. He's more of the reputation. Let's see, he'd be a very poor substitute to try and carry on his ideals. He'd be more of like a king of war, if you will. So he decides to let Howard's memory be left intact and not let the events happen taint him in the eyes of the Elbaf people, however much that might be tainted, though granted, I have a sneaking suspicion that they'll probably be more mad at the world government for manipulating their king, resulting forcing him to have his son kill him. But I do like how Loki is like, let's see, I can't, let's see, continue his father's ideals, but he can avenge him and the fallen soldiers, even though, let's see, he might be underestimating just how powerful the world government arguably is. Now, arguably, given what we've seen with Loki's strength, it's likely that he could probably beat anyone in the world government except Emu, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah. But I do like, let's see, I will admit, I was a bit surprised that the flashback ended here. I'd figured we might have seen at least two or three more chapters of Loki going out to sea, maybe meeting Lola, and maybe having his fight with Shanks. But I guess these are details either Oda is going to leave to another time. Granted, I'm hoping he's not going to have some of these details explained in the SBS, like Sorrow's family line or like Kid's backstory. I'm hoping that we still see Kid again, of course. And who knows, maybe I'm hoping somewhat was like some of that backstory lineage going to Zorro. I mean, let's see, Sentomaru's backstory was first explained in SBS, and then we actually saw it in the manga. Granted, apparently we're never going to see Rocky Port. It's going to be on Incident, and it's going to be on SBS, though granted. I wouldn't mind if someone did a spin-off manga telling the events of Rocky Port. That would be nice. I mean, there was like that Ace novel. It would be cool to see a Rocky Port novel or even manga. So I don't know, show something like that. I think that would be a nice little touch, if you will. But yeah. But yeah, he pretty much continues like the story to Hadrudan and probably implies that Hadrudan came, and that's when by the time he arrived back home, Loki had become the Father Slayer, if you will. Let's see, and he does admit he didn't deny, he never debunked this, but also admits he never bragged about it, showing that, let's see, in his own way, he cared about what his father and didn't really want, let's see, everything that's happened to be on, everything he did was undone. And he even asks Hadrudan, like, do you think I should have told the country everything? And I do like how Hadrudan is just listening in silently, just like thinking, like, just learning everything, processing all in, if you will. And even Luffy seems to be listening in and all that serious. It's like, let's see, for once Luffy's actually listening to a story, but which is kind of, let's see, shocking. But yeah, but I do like how, but like I said, I like how Julian seems to just like silently taking everything in, probably like realizing that, okay, so what truly happened to his father? It must be like a hard process for him. Granted, I'm curious just about Gabon with like he's speaking the truth, because the way before this flashback began, it seemed to imply that he wasn't actually there in person, but of course, we learned last few chapters he was. So I'm wondering why he ended up just not telling the truth, telling it like that. If I had to guess, he's probably concluding since he wasn't allowed to tell the truth just yet. He'd let Loki do it and then say, all right, now I can actually tell you the proper truth. But I don't know, I think Oda was just being a bit confusing and being a bit vague in that part. So it is what it is, unfortunately. But yeah. Let's see. And I do like how Loki talks about how he doesn't really want to bring this all up again. So yeah. I do like how Hadrudan is just like now talks about how he seems to now understand, especially why Chief Jarl, argued for clemency and protected Loki, preventing him from being executed, which makes me wonder if Jarl didn't actually have amnesia. Though granted, we saw from the flashback that didn't seem to be the case. But it seems like it was just his way of feigning it to make sure that no one learned the truth. Let's see. And I do like how Hadrudan realizes that his father chose to be deaf and be a slave to the world government, and realizes that the world government is his enemy, as well as Elbaf's, and it's curious how they manipulated him. I do like how Gabon talks about how these holy lights have connection with like Howard's story, but saying like Loki doesn't know, but he does know the details, which if I had to guess, it's because he knows via Shanks, so Shanks can tell them. So whatever Shanks told him, he can then tell them and all that stuff, which I'll be very curious to see how Luffy responds to that. I do like how the other giants are sort of reacting to Loki's story, but yeah. I do like how Julian says, you can explain that later, but we need to prioritize protecting Elbaf first. And we've got a waving hand from someone called Sharon next. Hello. I hope you're enjoying what I'm speaking of the stream, though granted you seem to be gone now. If you're back, feel free to do some comments. So, yeah. But, yeah. And Loki is finally released. And I do like how Julian says, at the very least, the two of us seem to share in common with loving our dad. I like how Luffy's excited. And, of course, Dagina just arrives. I like how Julian says, like, those are just a myth. Chopper's just completely terrified, which makes sense. He's like always been one of the Weakling trio. He's always terrified. And I do like how Loki's just smiling about this as a warm-up. Anyway, now we see Hadrunan really catching up with the rest of the new giant pirates. And I do like how they all apologize to Loki thinking he was a father killer. But Hadrunan, I do like it admits that this doesn't change everything else that you've done to them and all that stuff. But Loki says, like, just shut up and get going. Says he's going to deal with this giant first and then fly up afterwards, which might be means that the Ragnar can fly, that can do like what Thor did in like the Marvel comics. So who knows? That'd be cool. And I do like how Loki's excited to move again. Chopper, of course, being scared, which on one hand is a bit of a disappointment. Though I wonder if Gaban realizes that Chopper's too terrified and just like says, you know what, let's see, take me up so I can go and consent for my son, which arguably a nice thing for like let's see for Gaban to do to get Chopper away. Though he probably realizes that Chopper can't really love from India. Oh, okay, this is interesting. You know, I don't think I've ever had someone from India on my channel watching. I'm hoping you're enjoying what I'm having to say. Hope you enjoy what I'm having to say with this chapter. So, yeah, if you have any comments or like questions about it, feel free to put in Cheryl next. So, but yeah. So, I hope you are enjoying what I have to say. Anyway, well, I was like, oh yeah. I do like how it seems like Gaban's like getting them to move so Chopper doesn't have to deal with this monster. Though, granted, I'm hoping the fact that Chopper's going up means that Oda's going to be giving him something to do, probably arguing more doctor stuff, either with Gaban or maybe Jao, because I'm thinking that sword's probably going to come out now, and he'll probably have to try and now properly explain everything to those citizens of Elbaf. But I'm hoping maybe Chopper will get a moment of action at the very least. Even if it's just a brief moment, I'll take it. So, because I will admit, I've been a bit disappointed with Chopper fighting-wise post-time skip, but hopefully that will go ahead. I do like how he got Sanji carrying him, which means that, who knows, perhaps this might be Gaban will be able to give Sanji some advice. So, but yeah, the Chopper Sanji dynamic is always fun to see. But anyway, I do like how Luffy is just sticking around just because he wants to see Loki up in action, which Loki's fine to oblige. And when we learn that Loki's hammer can not only summon lightning, but can also freeze, and seems to got like and his attack is Nebelheim, which I believe is one of the 9 realms in Norse mythology. So it makes many people wonder if perhaps Loki's hammer has basically 9 abilities based on the 9 realms, and maybe they're all elemental in some way, which would be awesome. And to show just how powerful it is, he freezes a giant, skeletal warrior that seems to be, if I had to guess, maybe 5 to 10 times larger than him, and Loki's an ancient giant, so it's like, whoa. And you see just how even shocked Luffy is, so yeah, you know this guy is strong, so yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he takes out quite a fair share of Killingham's imaginative warriors, so yeah. Overall, I give this chapter a I think a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. I like talking about just how powerful how Harold would have been as a invincible guards knight under Emus control that caused devastation to the world, and which just builds up the hype of how strong Loki is to actually defeat him. I do like how, due to the events of this event, like with Howard being defeated, Emu is just like decides that, you know what, let's see, we're going to stay away from Elbaf for now. Let's see, we had this once in a lifetime opportunity, but he was killed, and he shows visible fear for that. And that he may have some, and that apparently losing God's Knights seems to have some sort of effect of him during this contract. And we learn that Elbaf is of the D, so which shows Elbaf having much stronger ties to the D clan than we first perhaps maybe thought. So there's that. But also, I do like how Shanks, we see a bit more vulnerable side of Shanks, a bit more emotional, a bit more angry. Think of what happened to Howard and his own disgust by his own family, even though it seems for Garland in his own twisted sense sort of loves him in a sense, or at least at that time. But yeah. But I do like how Gabon, being like one of his father figures, calms him down and to not to be ashamed of himself, and he still has a role to play. I like how Loki decides that he's not fit to be a king that carries on Howard's ideas. Instead, he's one he's going to go and avenge him and all that stuff, taking the remaining giants that were there. I am curious to see their fate, even though Jarl tries to protest. I do like how after explaining all this, Hadjudin finally realizes that they both, despite the fact that Loki's done a lot of personal bad things to him, they both do love their father, and that it's actually the world government that's their enemy. So at least Ritzy uncuffs him for this, as though doesn't quite forgive him for everything else. So yeah. I do like how even Luffy is seriously looking in this conversation. Granted, I will admit Gabon's words are like, this is telling the truth. It's like and what he said before, a bit of a contradictory for what way he implied it before, but I guess that's just Oda just trying not to be vague. But yeah. But I do like that Loki's finally out, and there's actually one of those imaginative warriors to test it out. And I wouldn't be surprised if Loki ends up fully destroying it. But yeah, but it seems like everyone's going up. Arguably, Chopper's going up as well to help with Gabon, mostly due to his own cowardness of like the monster, and Gabon probably like realizing this, but also probably wants to actually check on his son. But it also probably leads to like perhaps maybe Gabon mentoring Sanji a bit as well. So we'll have to wait and see on that part. But I do like how Luffy's sticking around just to see with Loki, just to see how he fights, and of course one shots with that freezing ability. So yeah, arguably great. So yeah, 9 out of 10 chapter. I enjoyed it, and yeah, I loved it. So yeah. Anyway, I'll be heading off now. Thank you, Sharon Next, and thank you for your comments, even though you're just saying hi. And yeah, see, it's nice to know I got some fans from India, it seems, or at least people viewers from India. And we've got someone called Joyboy V1P going konnichiwa, which is saying hello. Hello, Joyboy. You just arrived just when I was about to wrap up the stream. I've given the chapter 9 out of 10. Do you have any comments you have, let's see, before I wrap up, or are you just saying hi? Because if so, let's see, I'll give you a chance to quickly type in something now, and I can respond. If not, are we wrapping up the stream? So yeah, because I've just basically covered everything. So yeah, this chapter's hype. Granted, it's a shame that it's the One Piece is on a break next week because, well, I was really looking forward to seeing more of Loki action, but it's clear that we're now probably going to begin the final phase of this Elbaf arc as the new giant pirates, the monster trio, Loki, all heading up to now face whatever threats that remain of Elbaf and join up with the remaining Straw Hats, if you will. Of course, sadly, One Piece is on break, so we'll have to wait 2 weeks, but nevertheless, this is quite the hype chapter to leave on, and the flashback's finally over. I will admit, I was hoping to see more of like Loki versus Shanks, but I guess Oda wants to save that for another time. When that will happen, who knows? Hopefully it's not an SBS, but yeah, anyway. That's the chapter, so I have all I have to say. Once again, thanks Sharon Next and Joyboy V1P. See for your comments, and I hope you all will join me next time when I review One Piece. But for now, I am Blue Star Saber, signing off. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.